The Mongol invasions of Japan, a tale of resilience and divine winds. Picture a fleet of over 4,000 ships darkening the horizon. The year is 1281, and the largest naval invasion force in history until D-Day is approaching the shores of Japan. At its helm is none other than Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, and ruler of the most powerful empire humanity had ever seen. The Mongols had conquered everything in their path, from China to Persia, from Korea to Eastern Europe. Their empire stretched across 2 continents, ruling over half of the world's population. They seemed unstoppable. Yet somehow, this tiny island nation of Japan would become their greatest defeat. This is the story of how the impossible happened. How a samurai nation facing overwhelming odds stood against the mightiest military force of the 13th century. It's a tale of courage, innovation, and what some would call divine intervention. But most importantly, it's a story that would shape Japan's national identity for centuries to come. Imagine being a Japanese defender on that fateful day. You're standing on the beaches of Hakata Bay in modern-day Fukuoka. The morning mist parts to reveal an armada so vast it seems to stretch to the edge of the world. The Mongol ships are unlike anything you've ever seen. Massive Korean-built vessels carrying not just warriors, but early forms of gunpowder weapons and explosive bombs. This isn't just an invasion. It's a clash between 2 entirely different military traditions. But to understand how this extraordinary confrontation came to be, we need to go back a few years to 1266, when Kublai Khan sent his first envoys to Japan. Their message was simple but chilling: submit or be destroyed. The response they received would set in motion one of history's most remarkable military campaigns. The Japanese response came from the samurai regency in Kamakura. The regent Hojo Tokimune, just 21 years old at the time, did something almost unthinkable. He ignored the great Khan's demands completely. In the diplomatic world of the 13th century, this was equivalent to a declaration of war. More envoys came, and more were sent away empty-handed. The final group was executed, a deliberate provocation that sealed Japan's fate. What made the Japanese so confident? Or were they simply naive about the threat they faced? The truth lies in a unique combination of geography, military tradition, and political structure. Unlike the vast steppes of Central Asia, where the Mongols perfected their cavalry tactics, Japan was a land of mountains, forests, and narrow coastal plains. The samurai had spent centuries developing fighting techniques perfectly suited to this terrain. But the Mongols weren't known for being easily deterred. In 1274, Kublai Khan launched his first invasion attempt. This was no mere raiding party. It was a force of 900 ships carrying 23,000 troops, including Korean and Chinese soldiers. They landed on the beaches of Hakata Bay, bringing with them weapons that would shock the Japanese defenders. The Mongol army fought unlike anything the samurai had ever encountered. Instead of the traditional one-on-one combat favored by samurai warriors, the Mongols fought in disciplined units. They used coordinated volleys of arrows, explosive bombs thrown by catapults, and infantry tactics that had conquered empires. The Japanese defenders faced not just a larger force, but an entirely different way of warfare. The first battles were devastating for the Japanese. Their traditional samurai tactics, charging in for single combat while announcing their family names and achievements, proved disastrous against the Mongols' coordinated attacks. The invaders' arrows were shorter but more powerful than Japanese arrows, and their soldiers fought as unified groups rather than individual warriors. But the Japanese proved adaptable. They quickly learned to fight in groups rather than as individuals. They began using their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage, launching guerrilla-style attacks and forcing the Mongols to fight in narrow spaces where their superior numbers meant little. Then came what the Japanese would later call divine intervention. As night fell on the first invasion, a massive storm, a typhoon, began brewing in the Sea of Japan. The Mongol commanders, unfamiliar with the ferocity of Japanese weather patterns, made a fatal decision. They ordered their ships to withdraw from the coast and regroup at sea. What happened next would become legend. The typhoon struck the Mongol fleet with devastating force. Their ships, designed for the calmer waters of Korea and China, were ill-equipped to handle the violent seas. Hundreds of vessels were destroyed, thousands of soldiers drowned, and the mighty invasion force was scattered to the winds. But this was just the beginning. Kublai Khan, enraged by this defeat, would not be satisfied until Japan was brought to heel. He immediately began planning a second, even larger invasion. The Japanese, meanwhile, had learned valuable lessons from their brush with annihilation. They would spend the next 7 years preparing for the Mongols' return, building defenses that would change the course of history. The 7 years between the Mongol invasions were far from peaceful. The Japanese knew that Kublai Khan's wrath would return with even greater force, but rather than cower in fear, they undertook one of the most ambitious construction projects of medieval Japan, a project that would transform their coastline into an unprecedented defensive network. Along the shores of Hakata Bay, thousands of workers labored day and night to construct something revolutionary, a massive stone wall stretching for miles along the coastline. This wasn't just any wall. Known as the Genko Borui, or Mongol defense walls, these structures were carefully designed to counter the Mongol invasion tactics they had witnessed firsthand. Standing 15 feet high and 15 feet thick, these walls were engineering marvels of their time. But their true genius lay in their design. Unlike traditional fortress walls, they were built with multiple openings and defensive positions that allowed Japanese warriors to launch counterattacks while staying protected. The walls effectively nullified the Mongols' advantage in archery and explosive weapons, forcing them to fight on Japanese terms. But the Japanese weren't just building walls. They were revolutionizing their entire military strategy. The samurai class, traditionally trained in one-on-one combat, adapted their tactics for large-scale warfare. They developed new weapons and armor specifically designed to counter Mongol equipment. Training shifted from individual duels to coordinated unit tactics. Even their arrows were redesigned to match the penetrating power of Mongol shafts. Meanwhile, in China, Kublai Khan was preparing an invasion force that would dwarf his previous attempt. The numbers were staggering. 4,400 ships carrying 140,000 soldiers from Mongolia, China, and Korea. To put this in perspective, this was the largest naval invasion force in history until the D-Day landings of World War II, nearly 700 years later. The Khan was determined not just to conquer Japan, but to make an example of those who dared to defy the Mongol Empire. The invasion force set sail in the spring of 1281, but from the start, things didn't go as planned. The northern and southern Mongol fleets failed to coordinate effectively. The southern fleet, departing from southern China, arrived at Hakata Bay first. They found not the vulnerable shoreline of 7 years ago, but a heavily fortified coast bristling with Japanese defenders. The Japanese response was immediate and fierce. Using small, fast boats, they employed hit-and-run tactics against the larger Mongol ships. These raids, conducted at night, threw the invasion force into disarray. The samurai had learned from their previous encounter. Instead of honorable single combat, they focused on effective tactical warfare. The Mongol commanders faced a difficult decision. Their ships were too large to approach the shallow waters near the defensive walls, but their troops were vulnerable to Japanese attacks when trying to land. They decided to use their ships as floating platforms, anchoring in the bay while planning their next move. This proved to be a fatal mistake. For weeks, the two forces remained in a tense stalemate. The Mongols couldn't find a way past the defensive walls, while the Japanese couldn't decisively defeat the massive invasion fleet. But nature was about to intervene in a way that would become legendary. Japanese priests had been praying at temples across the country for divine intervention. Whether by coincidence or cosmic design, on August 15, 1281, their prayers seemed to be answered. Dark clouds began gathering on the horizon. The Japanese defenders, familiar with their local weather patterns, recognized the signs of an approaching typhoon. The Mongols, however, did not. What happened next would be remembered in Japanese history as the kamikaze, the divine wind. A massive typhoon, even more powerful than the one that had struck 7 years earlier, slammed into the Mongol fleet. The massive invasion force, trapped in Hakata Bay, was almost completely destroyed. The scale of destruction was unprecedented. Of the 4,400 ships in the invasion force, only a few hundred survived. Thousands of Mongol, Chinese, and Korean soldiers drowned in the churning waters. Others who made it to shore were captured or killed by Japanese defenders. The mighty Mongol Empire, which had seemed unstoppable, had been defeated not once but twice by a combination of Japanese determination and nature's fury. The defeat of the Mongol invasions marked a turning point in world history. For the first time, the seemingly invincible Mongol Empire had failed to conquer a nation they had set their sights on. But for Japan, the implications of these victories would echo through centuries, shaping their national identity in ways that continue to influence Japanese culture today. The immediate aftermath of the invasions transformed Japanese society. The samurai class, who had proved their worth in defending the nation, saw their social and political positions strengthened. The successful defense against the Mongols became a founding myth of samurai valor and Japanese exceptionalism. It was seen as proof that Japan was indeed a divine nation under the protection of the gods. But victory came at a heavy price. The massive military mobilization and construction of coastal defenses had drained Japan's resources. The rewards promised to the samurai who fought against the Mongols couldn't be paid, leading to widespread discontent. This financial strain would eventually contribute to the fall of the Kamakura shogunate, changing Japan's political landscape. The term kamikaze, divine wind, entered the Japanese lexicon as a powerful symbol of divine protection. This concept would be invoked centuries later during World War II, though in a drastically different context. The original kamikaze represented nature's protection of Japan, a defensive miracle rather than an offensive weapon. The Mongol invasions also left a lasting mark on Japanese military technology and tactics. The defensive walls built to repel the Mongols influenced Japanese castle construction for centuries. The experience of facing Mongol weapons led to innovations in Japanese armor and military strategy. The necessity of coordinated defense forever changed how Japanese armies fought, moving away from individual combat toward more organized warfare. Perhaps most significantly, the failed invasions helped cement Japan's unique position in East Asian history. While China, Korea, and most of Asia had experienced Mongol rule, Japan remained proudly independent. This historical distinction would influence Japan's foreign relations and self-image for generations to come. Archaeological discoveries continue to reveal new details about these pivotal events. In recent years, researchers working in Hakata Bay have uncovered Mongol ships preserved in the seabed, complete with weapons, personal items, and ship construction details that are revolutionizing our understanding of this period. Some of these artifacts can be seen today in museums across Japan, tangible connections to this extraordinary moment in history. The story of the Mongol invasions carries particular resonance in today's world. It's a reminder that technology and overwhelming force don't guarantee victory. The Japanese succeeded through a combination of innovation, adaptation, and resilience, qualities as valuable today as they were 7 centuries ago. It's also a story about the role of preparation and unity in the face of existential threats. The Japanese didn't just pray for divine intervention. They spent years preparing their defenses, adapting their tactics, and working together to protect their homeland. The kamikaze typhoons might have delivered the final blow, but it was Japanese preparation that made those natural events decisive. Today, the sites of these battles are peaceful places. In Fukuoka, you can still see sections of the defensive walls that helped save Japan. Standing there, it's hard to imagine the desperate battles that once took place on these shores, but beneath the quiet surface, these places hold the memory of one of history's most remarkable defensive victories. The legacy of the Mongol invasions extends far beyond Japan. They represent a crucial moment when the course of world history could have gone very differently. Had the Mongols succeeded in conquering Japan, the entire cultural landscape of East Asia might have been transformed. Instead, Japan remained independent, developing its unique culture and traditions that continue to fascinate the world today. In the end, the story of the Mongol invasions is more than just a tale of battles and divine winds. It's a testament to human resilience, the power of innovation, and the unpredictable role of nature in human affairs. It reminds us that even the mightiest empires can be defeated when facing determined resistance, and that sometimes, against all odds, the seemingly impossible becomes possible. Thank you for watching this exploration of one of history's most fascinating moments. If you enjoyed learning about this crucial turning point in Japanese history, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories from Japan's past. Your support helps us continue bringing these amazing historical tales to life. See you in our next historical adventure.